More than half of all marriages are fundamentally doomed before they even begin. And it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with finding the wrong person. The institution you're about to enter has been loaded with expectations so mathematically impossible that failure isn't a possibility, it's a probability. Picture this. She sits at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, holding divorce papers that feel like a certificate of failure for everything she believed about love. 10 years ago, she walked down that aisle convinced she'd found her soulmate, best friend, passionate lover, financial partner, spiritual companion, emotional therapist, and life coach, all wrapped into one perfect person. He stands in the doorway, emotionally exhausted, watching the collapse of something he never fully understood. He thought marriage meant finding someone to share life with. Instead, he discovered he'd signed up to be someone's entire universe. They're both good people. They both tried. They both followed the script society handed them. And like millions of others, they're discovering that the script is fundamentally broken. Today, I'm going to explain why this collapse is happening, why the divorce rate continues to climb, and why understanding this will fundamentally transform how you approach relationships. Because what I'm about to share isn't just theory. It's the difference between building something that lasts and becoming another statistic. But here's what most relationship experts won't tell you. Marriage is collapsing under its own weight, like a bridge designed for horses and carriages being asked to support freight trains. And this isn't a metaphor. This is engineering. Think about what happens when you overload any system beyond its design capacity. Bridges collapse, servers crash, engines blow, relationships fail. This isn't because the systems are inherently flawed. It's because they're being asked to do things they were never engineered to handle. Now, here's something that should disturb you deeply. Marriage was originally designed as a humble institution with one primary function, providing a stable context for raising children. Two adults agreeing to work together toward the shared goal of successfully launching the next generation. That's it. Simple, pragmatic, achievable. But over the centuries, we've piled additional expectations onto this simple framework until it's become an impossible mega institution that no two people can possibly sustain. We've transformed marriage from a focused partnership into an everything relationship that's expected to fulfill every human need, satisfy every emotional requirement, and solve every life problem. And here's the proof. Divorce rates skyrocketed precisely when marriage expectations became unlimited rather than specific. The more we've asked marriage to be, the less it's been able to deliver. The correlation is undeniable. The causation is clear. The ancient Stoics understood something profound. When you demand that external circumstances provide your internal fulfillment, you've already lost. Marcus Aurelius would have looked at modern marriage and recognized it immediately. The fundamental error of expecting one person to be the source of all meaning. Let me be brutally honest about what modern marriage actually demands. You're expected to be co-parent, best friend, passionate lover, emotional therapist, financial partner, social companion, spiritual guide, personal trainer, career coach, and entertainment committee. As Kurt Vonnegut brilliantly observed, you're not enough people. No individual can possibly be everything to another person. The attempt to create such total relationships doesn't lead to deeper connection. It leads to inevitable disappointment when reality falls short of impossible expectations. And here's what's truly devastating. You end up resenting your partner not for being a bad person, but for being a human being with limitations. Think about that. The person you chose is suffering not because they failed you, but because they failed to be superhuman. This is what I mean when I talk about the tyranny of unrealistic expectations. You're not setting standards, you're setting traps. Let's do the math together. If marriage requires you to excel in 10 different roles simultaneously and you're naturally gifted at maybe 3 of them, you're walking into a situation where 70% failure is built into the structure from day one. This isn't a character flaw. This is architecture. The tragedy isn't that people are failing at marriage. The tragedy is that they're failing at something that was designed to fail, then blaming themselves for not being enough. Let me show you this pattern in another domain so you can see how insidious this overloading truly is. Consider work. Jobs were originally designed for one simple purpose, providing opportunity to earn money in exchange for service. You showed up, performed tasks, received compensation, went home. Simple, clear, functional. But modern career culture has piled impossible expectations onto work, just like we've done with marriage. Now, jobs are expected to be fulfilling, meaningful, identity providing, exciting, fun, socially conscious, personally growth oriented, creatively satisfying, and spiritually enriching. We expect our careers to give us purpose, to define who we are, to be our passion and our calling. And when work inevitably fails to provide all of these things, we experience what we call career crisis. We feel lost, unfulfilled, wondering if we're in the wrong field entirely. The result? Widespread career dissatisfaction, constant job hopping, and the belief that the right job will solve all your life problems. Sound familiar? The parallel to marriage is exact. We've taken a practical institution designed for child-rearing partnership and burdened it with romantic, emotional, spiritual, social, and personal expectations it cannot possibly fulfill. And just like with careers, when marriage inevitably fails to provide all of these things, we experience relationship crisis. We feel disconnected, wondering if we're with the wrong person entirely. In both cases, the overloading removes the institution's ability to function effectively, even in its original intended capacity. When you ask something to be everything, it often ends up being nothing. But there's one expectation we've added to marriage that's more harmful than all the others combined. And it's the one everyone thinks is the most important. The heaviest weight we've placed on modern marriage is romantic love, and it's crushing the institution beneath its impossible demands. Now, before you dismiss this as cynicism, stay with me because what I'm about to explain might save your relationship. Romantic love is intense, consuming, and temporary by its very nature. It's biologically designed, to bring two people together long enough for bonding and reproduction to occur. It was never meant to sustain the practical realities of mortgage payments, child rearing, career building, and aging together. This is neuroscience, not pessimism. The brain chemicals that create that intoxicating feeling of being in love, dopamine, oxytocin, norepinephrine, they diminish over time. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. Your brain cannot maintain that level of intensity indefinitely without burning out. And here's something crucial to understand. That initial rush, that overwhelming feeling of being consumed by another person, it's chemically similar to what happens in certain addictive states. It's meant to be temporary. It's meant to get you bonded long enough for deeper connections to form. But we've made the mistake of thinking that initial chemical rush is what love is supposed to feel like forever. So when it naturally fades, as it must, we think something's gone wrong. We think we've fallen out of love. We think we need to find that feeling again, either with this person or someone new. Here's the paradox that nobody wants to acknowledge. Romantic love demands novelty, excitement, passion, and emotional intensity. Marriage requires stability, routine, compromise, and emotional consistency. These aren't complementary forces, they're opposing ones. When we make passionate love the prerequisite for marriage, we're building the institution on the most unstable foundation possible. It's like building a house on sand and wondering why it collapses during the first storm. The most passionate love affairs in history were typically brief, intense, and often tragic. Romeo and Juliet. And Lancelot and Guinevere, Tristan and Isolde, notice a pattern? They're all stories of passion that couldn't survive mundane reality. When we try to force passionate love to bear the weight of practical partnership, we remove both the passion and the partnership. The soulmate myth has done more damage to modern relationships than perhaps any other cultural narrative. And I say this with precision. It's a myth. A dangerous one. Let's think about this rationally. There are approximately 8 billion people on Earth. If there's one perfect person for you somewhere in the world, what are the mathematical odds you'll find them? And what are the odds they'll happen to live in your city, speak your language, and be available at the exact moment you are? The whole concept crumbles under the slightest logical examination. Yet millions of people are sabotaging actual good partnerships because they're waiting for a mathematical impossibility. I've seen this play out countless times. Someone in a perfectly functional relationship, someone who's built something real with another person, starts questioning everything because they don't feel that mythical soulmate connection. They wonder if there's someone better out there, someone who would understand them more deeply, someone who would complete them more fully. And sometimes they leave. They end a good thing in pursuit of a perfect thing. And you know what happens? They discover that the next person also has limitations, also has flaws, also fails to be everything they imagined. The soulmate narrative creates this toxic expectation. If this person were truly the one, everything would be easy. They would understand me perfectly. We would never have significant conflicts. Our needs would align naturally. This is fantasy. And it's leading people to abandon relationships that could work because they're not achieving an impossible standard. Here's what actually works. Compatibility isn't found, it's built. Successful partnerships aren't discovered. They're constructed through deliberate effort, realistic expectations, and mutual respect. The people who stay married aren't the ones who found their soulmate. They're the ones who decided to become compatible partners. Epictetus taught that we should focus on what's within our control and accept what isn't. You cannot control whether someone is your soulmate. You can control whether you become a good partner. That's where your power lies. We've gotten the sequence completely backwards, and this reversal is costing millions of people their happiness. For most of human history, the sequence was partnership first, love second. People married for practical reasons, family alliances, economic stability, survival. Love, when it developed, emerged from successful partnership. And you know what? Those marriages were often more stable than ours. This isn't an argument for arranged marriage. It's an observation about causation versus correlation. We've reversed this. Love first, partnership second. We expect intense romantic feelings to somehow produce practical partnership skills. We believe that if we feel strongly enough, we'll magically know how to navigate conflict, manage finances, raise children, and weather life's challenges together. This is like expecting someone who's really excited about playing piano to automatically have the technical skills to perform a Rachmaninoff concerto. Enthusiasm doesn't replace competence, and this is where so many relationships run into trouble. Two people meet, they feel that incredible chemistry, that spark, that sense of finally finding someone who gets them. They ride that wave of emotion right into commitment. Maybe they move in together. Maybe they get married. And then reality hits. They discover they have completely different approaches to conflict resolution. One person needs to talk things through immediately, the other needs space to process. They discover they have different values around money. One's a saver, one's a spender. They discover they have different expectations about everything from how clean the house should be to how much time they should spend together versus apart. And because they entered the relationship based on feelings rather than compatibility, they're unprepared for these very normal, very manageable differences. They start to think that these conflicts mean they're not meant to be together, that if this were the right person, these issues wouldn't exist. Here's what actually works. Partnership skills create the foundation for sustainable love. When two people work well together toward shared goals, when they communicate effectively, when they demonstrate mutual respect and reliability, affection develops naturally. This love is deeper and more durable because it's earned, not assumed. The love that grows from successful partnership is more sustainable than the love that tries to create one. One is built on reality, the other is built on hope. But even if you understand all of this intellectually, there's still a massive institutional trap waiting for you. The solution to marriage's collapse isn't trying harder to meet impossible expectations. It's understanding what marriage can actually do and letting go of what it cannot. And this is where you gain your power back. This requires separating the various elements that have been conflated with marriage over centuries. Love affairs can exist separately from domestic partnerships. Spiritual connections can develop independently of legal contracts. Social status can be built through individual achievement rather than relationship validation. Listen carefully. This doesn't mean your marriage can't include love, spirituality, or social connection. It means these elements should emerge naturally from a functioning partnership, not be prerequisites for it. When marriage focuses on its core function, creating a stable context for shared goals like raising children or building a life together, it becomes manageable and sustainable. Two people working toward common objectives with clear roles and realistic expectations can create lasting partnerships. This is the difference between a focused mission and a scattered fantasy. Focus wins, always. This approach requires accepting that your partner will not be everything to you. You will need other relationships and sources of fulfillment. The marriage itself is just one component of a rich, full life, not the entirety of it. Seneca wrote about the danger of placing all your well-being in the hands of fortune, or in this case, in the hands of another person. The wise person diversifies their sources of meaning and fulfillment. A strong marriage is part of a strong life, not a substitute for one. When you stop expecting your partner to be everything, you can finally appreciate who they actually are. That's not settling, that's maturity. And maturity is what sustains what passion starts. Let me give you a framework that actually works, because knowing what's broken isn't enough. You need to know what to build instead. Successful long-term partnerships are built on three foundations, and you need all three. First, shared fundamental values, what you both believe matters in life. Second, compatible life goals, where you're actually heading. Third, mutual respect for each other's autonomy, the recognition that you're two whole people choosing to walk together, not two halves trying to become one. Notice what's not on that list? Intense passion, constant excitement, completion of each other's sentences. Those are bonuses if they happen, but they're not the foundation. And let me be clear about what I mean by shared fundamental values. I'm not talking about agreeing on everything. I'm talking about alignment on the core things that drive your decisions. Do you both value honesty, even when it's uncomfortable? Do you both believe in taking responsibility for your actions? Do you both prioritize growth over comfort? These are the values that matter. Compatible life goals doesn't mean you want exactly the same things. It means your individual goals don't contradict each other. If one person wants to travel the world and live nomadically, and the other wants to put down roots and never leave their hometown, you've got a problem. Not because either goal is wrong, but because they're incompatible. And mutual respect for autonomy is perhaps the most misunderstood of the three. This doesn't mean living separate lives. It means recognizing that your partner is a complete person with their own thoughts, feelings, goals, and identity. They're not an extension of you. They're not there to complete you. They're there to walk alongside you. Successful marriages require understanding that conflict is normal, that passion fades, that people change. This isn't pessimism. It's realism. And realism is what allows you to build something that survives contact with reality. When you expect challenges, you prepare for them. When you expect perfection, you collapse at the first difficulty. Your expectations determine your outcomes. The most successful marriages are those where both partners maintain individual identities, relationships, and sources of fulfillment outside the marriage while bringing their best selves to the partnership. They have friends, they have interests. They have lives that don't revolve entirely around each other. This creates something paradoxical but true. The less you need your partner for everything, the more you can appreciate them for what they actually provide. Here's your starting point. Sit down with your partner, or with yourself if you're not married yet, and answer this question. What are we actually trying to accomplish together? Not what do I feel, but what are we building? When you have clarity on shared goals, you have something to work toward instead of just feelings to maintain. And goals are more sustainable than feelings ever will be. Here's what nobody tells you about marriage. It's not a destination. It's an ongoing project that requires maintenance, adjustment, and realistic assessment throughout your entire life. And that's actually good news. People change, circumstances change. What worked in your 20s won't work in your 40s. The question isn't whether your marriage will need to evolve. It's whether you're willing to consciously evolve it or let it stagnate until it breaks. This requires regular, honest conversations about whether your partnership is still serving the goals you both have. Not do I still feel butterflies, but are we still effective partners for what we're trying to accomplish? Sometimes adaptation means staying together differently. Sometimes it means acknowledging that your shared mission has ended. Both require courage, the courage to be honest rather than comfortable. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your challenges in marriage aren't obstacles to overcome. They're information to integrate. Use them. The simple reason most marriages collapse is that we've turned a humble institution designed for practical partnership into an impossible fantasy meant to fulfill every human need. We've loaded it with expectations it was never designed to bear, and then we're surprised when it collapses under the weight. But here's what gives me hope. When you understand what marriage actually is versus what we've been told it should be, you gain the power to build something real, something sustainable, something that doesn't require you or your partner to be superhuman. You have two paths forward. Continue pursuing the fantasy and join the 50% who fail, or accept the reality and build something that actually works. The choice sounds harsh, but that's because reality is harsh until you align yourself with it. Then it becomes navigable. If this analysis has shifted how you think about relationships and marriage, subscribe to PsycheLens, because we're building a community of men who refuse to live according to comfortable lies. We're pursuing truth even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Hit that notification bell, because the next video will tackle something even more controversial: why the men who understand women best often struggle the most in relationships. There's a paradox there that needs explaining. And share this with any man who's considering marriage, because the conversation he has with his partner after watching this might save him from years of confusion and disappointment. This isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity, because at the end of the day, you can't fix what you don't understand, and now you understand. Sort yourself out, build something real, and remember, the impediment to action advances action.